You're sitting at your desk. It's late. Everyone else went home an hour ago. The office is quiet now, just the hum of the lights and your own thoughts. And you're replaying a conversation that happened earlier today. Someone took credit for your work. Right in front of everyone. Right in front of the people whose opinion actually matters. They didn't stumble into it either. They were deliberate, smooth. They delivered it with a smile like it cost them nothing, because to them it did cost them nothing. And you sat there and you said absolutely nothing. You smiled back. You nodded. And then you watched the room respond to them the way you needed the room to respond to you. You drove home in silence. You're still in that silence now. And here's what's really eating at you. It's not just that it happened, it's that it's happened before. Not this exact scene, but this exact feeling. Different person, different room, different year, same result. You walked away smaller than you arrived. You swallowed something that deserved to come out. And the version of yourself you imagined being, the version who speaks up, the version who doesn't let things slide, that version was nowhere in the room today. And somewhere in the back of your mind, the thought you don't want to finish is already forming. This is just who I am. Stop. Don't finish that thought, because it's not true. But the reason it keeps happening has nothing to do with who you are. It has everything to do with something you've never been shown. And that's exactly what the next few minutes are about. If this is your first time here, subscribe right now. Not because I'm asking for numbers, but because what we build on this channel is a specific kind of thinking. The kind that doesn't just motivate you for 48 hours and then disappears. The kind that actually changes how you see situations before they happen. So you stop waking up in the middle of the night rehearsing what you should have said. That's what we do here. Now, let's get into it. The question you keep asking yourself is, why does this keep happening to me? And the reason you keep asking it is because the answers you've been given your whole life don't actually fit. You've been told to be more confident. You've been told to speak up. You've been told to stop being so nice. You may have even tried some of those things, and maybe they helped a little. Maybe they helped for a week. But then you were back in a room, in a different situation with a different person, and it happened again. Because those answers, they're aimed at the symptom. They're not aimed at the root. And if you keep treating symptoms without touching the root, the same sickness just comes back dressed in different clothes. So let me tell you what the root actually is. Every man who feels chronically overlooked, every man who feels like his effort never quite gets the recognition it earns, every man who keeps finding himself in positions where other people seem to move ahead while he stays exactly where he is. There is a pattern underneath all of it. Not a personality flaw, not a cosmic curse, a pattern. And patterns, once you see them, can be interrupted. Here's what the pattern looks like from the inside. You were taught somewhere early in life that the way to earn your place is to be undeniable. Work hard enough, be good enough, be reliable enough, be patient enough, and eventually the right people will see it and reward it. You carry that belief into every room you enter, every job, every relationship, every team, and you operate from it constantly, usually without even knowing it. You put the work in and you wait. You contribute and you expect that contribution to speak for itself. You stay loyal, and you expect loyalty to be returned in kind. That belief feels like integrity. It feels like dignity, like you're the one person in the room who isn't playing games, who isn't performing, who isn't being political. And that feeling is the trap, because the belief that merit eventually wins, that the world eventually sees and rewards what you deserve, that belief is not wisdom. It's a story, and it's a story that was handed to you before you were old enough to question it. The world does not reward what you deserve. The world responds to what you project, what you claim, and what you refuse to accept. And when you've spent years operating from a script that says put your head down and wait to be noticed, you have accidentally trained every room you walk into to treat you as background. That's why it keeps happening. Now, I need to pause here for a second. Because if you've watched videos like this before, you already know what comes next. The guy on screen is about to say something like, the solution is just to speak up more, to be more assertive, to stop being afraid of confrontation, to own your worth. And you're going to nod, and it's going to feel like the answer. And you're going to close this tab and try to be a little louder and a little bolder for the next few days. And then you'll be back to exactly where you started. I'm not going to do that to you, because speaking up more is not the answer. Being more assertive is not the answer. Those are surface-level adjustments to a problem that lives several floors underground. And here is the part that most people never get told. If you fix the surface without touching what's underneath, you don't solve the problem. You just change the costume it wears. You become a man who occasionally speaks up but still gets moved around by other people. You become louder but not more free. And loudness without clarity is just noise. So let's go deeper. There is a specific mechanism through which other people gain and keep power over you. And once you see this mechanism clearly, you will never be able to unsee it. It will change how you watch every interaction you're part of, every conversation you witness, every dynamic in every room. The mechanism is this: your reactions. Every time someone disrespects you, every time someone talks over you, every time someone takes something that should have been yours and walks away with it, the thing that gave them the ability to do that is not their strength. It is your reaction. Or more precisely, the way your reaction happened before your thinking did. Here's what that looks like in the body. Someone does something that should not have been done. Before you've even consciously processed what happened, an emotion fires. It might be embarrassment. It might be anger. It might be that cold stomach drop feeling of suddenly being aware that everyone in the room just saw something happen to you. And that emotional response, that automatic firing, makes a decision for you before you get to make it yourself. It closes your throat. It blurs your thinking. It makes the room feel suddenly too small. And in that 2-second window where the emotion is driving, someone else is already moving, already speaking, already filling the space that your reaction just emptied. And the cruel part is this: the person who moved into that space, they didn't have to do anything exceptional. They didn't have to be smarter than you, more skilled than you, more deserving than you. They just had to be less reactive. They just had to not freeze. Because in the world of human dynamics, the person who stays composed while others react is, in that moment, the most powerful person in the room. Every time, without exception. The man who controls his reactions controls the room. That's not a motivational phrase. That's a description of a mechanic, of how power actually transfers between people in real time. And once you understand it as a mechanic rather than as a personality trait, something shifts. Because mechanics can be understood. Mechanics can be worked with. You don't have to be born with composure. You can build it. But only if you understand what you're actually building and why. Right now, drop a comment and tell me about a moment where an emotional reaction cost you something. A relationship, an opportunity, a position, a room. You don't have to give all the details, just the shape of it. I read these, and more importantly, naming it out loud does something to how you carry it. This channel is for men who are doing the actual work. If that's you, I want to hear from you. Now here is the part that most people never reach. The layer beneath the layer. You understand now that reactions are the mechanism. But the next question is, why do you react the way you do? Why does a certain look from a certain person make your throat close? Why does being ignored by someone specific make you chase them harder? Why does public embarrassment hit you so much deeper than it seems to hit other people? This is not random. This is not just your personality. Every emotional reaction you have is attached to something specific, something you're afraid to lose: approval, respect, a sense of mattering, safety, the image of yourself that you need other people to confirm back to you. These are the things sitting underneath your reactions. And here is the uncomfortable truth. The people who have the most power over you, they know what those things are. Not necessarily because they sat down and analyzed you, but because you showed them. Over time, you showed them what you defend. You showed them what makes you go quiet. You showed them what you chase when it's withheld. You showed them where you're soft. And that information, that map of your vulnerabilities, sits in the hands of every person who has spent real time around you. And people, when it serves them, use maps. So the actual work, the thing that changes your life if you do it honestly, is to look at what sits underneath your reactions, not to manage the reactions better on the surface, but to go to the thing that makes the reaction fire in the first place and ask yourself honestly, why does losing this terrify me so much? Because when you find that thing and you sit with it long enough, one of two things happens. Either you realize the fear is bigger than the actual threat and the fear slowly loses its grip, or you realize that what you've been afraid to lose was never really yours to keep in the first place. Other people's approval, other people's version of you, other people's confirmation that you matter. None of those things were ever stable ground. They were always borrowed. And a man who builds himself on borrowed ground will always be one withdrawal away from collapse. Here's the second thing I need you to carry out of this video. The need for external confirmation is the leak in the foundation. Seal the leak, and the whole structure changes. Now let's talk about what replaces it. Because there's a version of this conversation that ends with just care less, just stop needing people's approval. Just be above it all, and that version is useless. You can't think your way out of need. You can't just decide to stop needing things. That's not how human beings work. What you can do is redirect the source. Instead of needing confirmation from the outside, you build something on the inside that doesn't require a vote. This is where self-knowledge becomes the most strategic thing a man can possess. Not self-awareness in the soft sense, the kind where you journal your feelings and feel better about them. Real self-knowledge, the kind where you can sit in a room where someone is attempting to diminish you and feel, not nothing, but something that doesn't move you. Something that observes what's happening without being taken over by it. The kind where you can watch someone try to pull your strings and notice with almost clinical curiosity that the strings are no longer attached to anything they can reach. That kind of groundedness changes everything about how you show up, because you stop performing. You stop trying to manage what the room thinks of you. You stop bracing for impact every time a conversation shifts. You become genuinely present instead of constantly defensive. And presence, real presence, reads as power in every room. People don't know why they trust someone like that. They just do. They don't know why someone like that commands attention without demanding it. They just feel it. And now let's talk about the third piece. Because understanding your reactions and understanding what drives them is internal work. But there's an external skill that completes this, and it's the one that people most underestimate. It is the intelligent use of silence and timing. Most men, when they're trying to gain ground in a room, talk more. They fill space. They explain themselves. They justify. They offer context that wasn't asked for. They volunteer information that gives away their position. And every word beyond what's necessary is a word that reduces their leverage. Because the person who talks the most in a room reveals the most. They show you what they want to be believed. They show you where they're insecure. They show you what they're afraid of. And the person who is sitting quietly on the other side of the table is collecting all of that. Silence from a man who has nothing to prove sounds completely different from silence from a man who is afraid to speak. That difference is not subtle. People feel it before they can name it. One silence expands and fills a room. The other silence shrinks and retreats into itself. And if you've been the kind of man who talks to fill his own discomfort, to manage how others perceive him, to make sure he isn't misunderstood, then you already know which silence has been yours. You felt the discomfort of quiet. You felt the pull to explain, to clarify, to add one more sentence just to make sure they got it. And every time you gave in to that pull, you spent something. You spent composure. You spent positioning. You spent the very authority you were trying to earn. The practice is this. In any room at any moment before you speak, ask yourself one question. Does saying this serve my position or does it serve my discomfort? If the answer is discomfort, stay quiet. Let the silence do the work. Because silence used by a man who knows why he's using it is not emptiness. It is pressure. It is the space where the other person has to fill in the blank. And what people fill silence with tells you more about them than anything they'd say if you kept talking. Now I want to bring everything back to the man at the desk. Let's run the scene again, but this time with everything we've covered sitting underneath him. Same room, same moment. Someone takes credit for his work, same audience, same stakes. But this time, when the emotion fires, he feels it and he doesn't become it. There's a breath that nobody else notices. A half second of stillness that doesn't look like hesitation, it looks like patience. And then he speaks. Not loudly. Not with rehearsed aggression. Not with the performance of confidence. Just clearly, precisely. The right number of words and not one more. Words that make the room recalibrate without him ever raising his voice. And the person who tried to take from him feels something shift. Not because they were confronted dramatically, but because they encountered a man who was clearly not going to be moved. A man whose reaction wasn't a gift he handed over. A man who had done enough work on himself that his response came from awareness and not from fear. And that quality, that specific quality, is not forgettable. People file it. They remember it the next time they're deciding who to test. That's the shift. Not a new personality, not a performance of toughness. Just a man who stopped letting the world write his responses for him. The pattern breaks there. Not because the room changed, because he changed. And when a man genuinely changes at that level, the room always, eventually, reflects it back. The people who were testing him stop. The people who were overlooking him notice. The people who were using his reactions against him find that the mechanism no longer works, and they have to decide whether to bring something real or move on to someone else. Most of them move on. Because this was never personal. It was always just about who was available to be moved. And that last sentence is worth sitting with for a moment. Most of what you've interpreted as people targeting you, or being against you or not believing in you, most of it was not personal. It was opportunistic. People move into available space. They take available things. They test available thresholds. And for a long time, you were available. That's not a condemnation. That's just a description of where you were. The work we're talking about is the work of becoming unavailable, of closing the gaps that people have been moving through, of becoming, in the most precise sense of the word, someone you cannot accidentally walk over. This doesn't make you hard. This doesn't make you closed. It makes you clear. And clear men. Men who know themselves. Men who don't hand their reactions away. Men who understand that timing and silence are tools, not weaknesses. Those men have a quality that is almost magnetic, because in a world full of people performing and reacting and managing and scrambling, a man who is simply, completely, undistractedly himself stands out like a clean note in a room full of noise. If you've made it this far, and this is hitting something real for you, do one thing right now. Send this to one man in your life who you know is stuck in that pattern, who keeps finding himself in rooms where things happen to him that shouldn't. Don't explain it. Don't build a case for why he needs to watch it. Just send it. Some things can only land when a person is ready, and you never know when someone's ready until it lands. The question you started this video with, sitting alone at your desk, asking yourself why this keeps happening, I want to close that loop now. The answer is not that you're weak. The answer is not that you're unlucky. The answer is that you were operating from a script that was written for you before you knew enough to edit it. A script that told you merit was enough, that patience would be rewarded, that good work speaks for itself. That script served other people's interests, not yours, and you've been running it so long it felt like your own voice. It isn't. Your real voice is the one that knows when to speak and when to hold. The one that doesn't need the room's approval to know its own worth. The one that can watch someone try to diminish it and simply, quietly, remain. That voice has always been in there. It just got buried under years of reacting and waiting and hoping that being good would be enough. It's not enough, but you are. And those are two completely different things. Subscribe to this channel if you want to keep building. We go deeper every week, not louder, deeper. The kind of thinking that compounds over time. The kind that you come back to 6 months from now and realize has quietly changed how you move through every room in your life. And next week, we're going to talk about something that almost no one addresses directly. The specific moment when people in your life decided to stop fully respecting you, not because of what you did, because of what you allowed. And how that decision gets made, usually in a single exchange, without either person saying a word about it. You don't want to miss that one. I'll see you there.